Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our November EIT meeting, and thanks so much for all who were able to join us today for our last meeting of the fall semester. So today we're going to get started with a collaboration presentation entitled Our Journey to Math Pathways and Co-Requisite Courses. And this presentation will be given by Stephanie Groover, as well as a consultant on this project, Kathy Almy. So Stephanie and Kathy, I'm going to turn things over to the two of you.
Thank you. I'm going to share our slide here. Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. So, like Jennifer said, this is Dodge State Community College's journey to math pathways and co-requisite courses. And Kathy, just hop in when you want to. So our process, it actually started in the fall of 2022, where we started gathering information and meeting with Dr. Almy. But we really got started in the spring of 2023, where we began working with Dr. Almy in developing the co-requisite courses for both contemporary math and the college algebra. So in this process, and this is where Dr. Almy really helped us, it wasn't just a math focus, it was a cross-sectional focus with faculty, student services, administration, support services, groups clear across campus. So everybody had a say in the process. We started looking at just Dr. Almy had us gather data, looking at the makeup of our students and their needs. This included, first generation, international students, how many had English as their second language, all of those factors that can go into students and their ability to be successful in college. And then looking at that, we also looked at how eliminating our developmental courses impacted other departments outside of the math department. And then we worked with other departments on campus, advising, registrar, finance, athletics. We marketed, and we had curriculum development.
And one thing I wanted to throw in there, like in Dodge's case, they have a very large percentage of other population that is athletes. That was one of the things that we were trying to hone in on, like what were some of the specific group, we want to serve all students, but what were some of the specific groups of students that they have a larger group of, then we make sure that we need to make sure that we are addressing their needs. So that was part of this initial intake, is just figuring out who we need to serve more.
So we began our initial design. So for both contemporary math and college algebra, we commingled the courses, and basically they had their parent course and then a 2-hour 0-credit lab for their support course that had the co-requisite material in it. So generally, the regular course would meet Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The co-requisite lab course would meet Tuesday, Thursday. We did, actually, Dr. Almy's the one that developed it, was a self-guided way for them to, a Google form to have them decide which course they needed based on their major, what they were going to study, and along with the multiple measure placement. So very similar to what we have for KBOR going forward. Main difference, our scores were just slightly different than what KBOR presented to us. To offset the cost, the college implemented a $10 fee for all students that were enrolled in either contemporary math or college algebra. And one of the things that we did with this initial design is we allowed students to enroll late into the support course. So maybe if they didn't initially enroll in the support course, but then decided they need it like after the first or second exam, we're allowing them to enroll at a later date.
And one of the things I wanted to, if we could just add onto the guided self-placement, I don't know how many of your schools have ever tried to use this, but one of the suggestions that I would just give people is that if they have it and they're considering using it, the main thing is we did not make it into a placement test. It wasn't like looking at like a bunch of math questions, what are your feelings about them, or things like that. It was just literally trying to get a sense of what is the student's pathway, how long has it been since they've taken math? When they took math, was it something that they needed more help with? Would they like more help with? It was just really some very basic things that would be easy for students to determine and help, would they be a good contender for extra support?
So the administration helped us in several ways. One, it was our Dr. Nolte, our president, that actually connected us with Dr. Almy. Then they actually hired her to help us navigate this process, which was a huge, huge help to us. But then they also provided financial support for the faculty to actually develop the curriculum and allowed us to choose the homework platform that we wanted to use, that we felt would be best for our students. And then they also just generally supported us in our work. So that went into, the president and other administration, when we talked to groups and things like that, they backed us as far as, this is something that we need to do. This is something that is, a KBOR initiative. We need to get behind the math department in this and work with them to be successful. So one of the big things that you might not think about as far as doing the redesign is marketing. So, and Dr. Almy was big in helping us realize what we needed to market. So during 2023, we met with different entities on campus. So administration, advising, athletics, the board of the college. I think we talked to just about everybody that we could in various meetings. I don't know how many meetings I actually attended during the spring of 2023, but it was a lot. Marketing created a logo for us to put on input information on social media, wrote newspaper article. You can kind of see our logo. Dodge City mascot is the Conquistadors, so conquering math with DC3. We place flyers around campus for information to students. We created a website. All of that went into marketing how math was changing for the fall of 2023.
And one thing with this, if you're wondering, why would we need to do this? Because it might seem like, well, if we have, even if in their case, they had guided self-placement. So we were trying to get students to know that there was changes coming. But even if there's not, even if you're just using mandatory placement, you might be like, why would this be necessary? And the reality is we have to remember how many students put off math. So doing a whole campaign to explain them, hey, math has changed. We have made this. We are working to make this a better experience for students. We want you to, take the classes. We're here to work with you and help you be successful. I've seen this work at so many schools, and it's just, to get students aware of something's different. I don't need to put my math off anymore and go ahead and get started with it.
So here is, we have not stayed with our initial design when we started last year in the fall. So like we said, we had the guided self-placement. It really did take students through, what ACT score did you have? What was your SAT or AccuPlace? What grades did you get in high school? What were your math scores like? How long has it been since you've been out of school? And what we found for our particular population of students, they didn't follow the guided self-placement. So starting fall of 2024, so this is the first semester that we've implemented this. Instead of having guided self-placement, we had mandatory placement. And basically, you had to score within, on the AccuPlace or ACT to get into contemporary math or college algebra without the co-requisite. So anybody could take it with the co-requisite. We also had used contemporary math as a stepping stone, which now we know we can't do going forward. So that will be a change for next year as well. And really, we did that just because the guided self-placement, we had everybody trying to take college algebra, which is what all the athletes think they need. So we ended up with a wide range of scores and abilities within college algebra, when a lot of those would better have served, and what actually their pathway would have been would be contemporary math. Starting in fall of 2025, because we still don't have the students utilizing the co-requisite lab courses like they should. So we're going to move to a cohort model instead of the co-mingled. So everyone in there will be in the co-requisite course, and we'll meet 5 days a week. They'll just sign up for college algebra with review, or contemporary math with review, or elementary statistics with review, instead of choosing a lab time. And whether they want to take the co-requisite or not, they'll have to based on their placement criteria. So going forward, to prepare for fall of 2025, in the spring, we'll continue working with Dr. Almy to make changes to our current model, develop co-requisite support for statistics, which we didn't do in our initial design, and then also look at creating a math boot camp or a bridge program for those students that really don't meet the criteria to be in college algebra or contemporary math or statistics, to boost up their scores to be more successful in the co-requisite courses. We need to make a few adjustments to our current placement for the KBOR placement guidelines. And of course, since we're changing things, we're going to have a new marketing campaign, and then we still have to fully implement the math pathways. When we designed the co-requisite courses in the beginning, we knew that we'd be transitioning to math pathways. So everything's in place to do that now, just updating our degree plans.
And if anyone's wondering why they didn't do certain things, like they've added a stats co-requisite, but they didn't have that initially, it was because a lot of it, they were wanting to make sure they were in alignment with whatever KBOR was going to have as the guidelines. So they were trying to make changes, but hedge their bets as well, and not have to redo a bunch of things. So that was part of it too.
Any questions that you have for either of us?
And we do have time for questions. If people want to come off mute, let me ask one that I see in the chat. And then after that, colleagues, feel free to come off mute. Stephanie, if you want to stop sharing your slides so we can see one another, though, that'd be great. So one question, I'm curious if you are still offering prerequisite development at this time, or if those have already been replaced with the co-requisite development.
So at Dodge City, we went full steam ahead. We have not offered any developmental courses since fall of 2023. We actually offered one to finish out. We had done the module getting ready for, I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but basically we had a prep course where you went through different modules instead of like elementary algebra or introductory algebra. And we did have intermediate algebra, but we got some people through in the fall of 2023. Otherwise, we transitioned them all to either contemporary math or college algebra.
We have another question in the chat, and I'm glad someone asked this because I know it's a reoccurring situation, Stephanie, that you and I have talked about. How do you encourage your athletes to enroll in the appropriate gateway course? Because as you mentioned, there is a tendency for athletes who might want to transfer to think they need college algebra.
So right now, which we can't do going forward, currently, if they did not score at a certain level, we required them to take the contemporary math first. So going forward, that's kind of why we're looking at the boot camps for those student athletes. We're hoping that once the pathways get fully implemented, I keep on telling the business professor we're going to be really good for him because everybody's going to all the athletes will be business majors, because then they'll need college algebra as a pathway. But otherwise, we've just been trying to work with advising to make sure that they're taking the appropriate course for them.
Thanks
This
so
is a
much,
big thing.
Stephanie.
Advising is a big part of this, and working with the advisors. We've had some challenges, but that's normal. And so that's something we've continued to work on.
Thanks so much, Kathy. Dr. Kramer has his hand raised, and then after his question, I'll read another one from the chat. So Ed?
I'm sorry, I didn't know I raised my hand.
Oh,
Go
okay.
right ahead to the chat. Sorry about that.
That's okay. All right, let me go back to the chat then. Really great question coming your way now about success rates. Are you able to offer us any information on how the success in the pre-rec dev courses compares to the co-rec dev courses? And if not, that's okay. We know that this is a process and you're working your way through it.
We actually have increased our pass rates in those courses. It may be a little bit too soon to see if we're getting more students through college algebra, especially since like last year, we had a lot of students that were trying to take college algebra, were unsuccessful because they weren't quite prepared and they weren't taking the co-requisite along with it. We did, however, see these students that were participating in the co-requisite courses as compared to just taking the parent course, they had a higher success rate in those ones that were taking the co-requisite instead of just the parent course itself.
Great, thank you. Gabe, I see your hand raised.
Thanks. Thanks for that presentation, Stephanie. I had a question about what the causes were for the sort of lab model not working versus the cohort model.
It mainly is buy-in. They're either not enrolling in it or they're just not attending it. So that's kind of in our plans to make it less obvious what is the lab part and what is the main course going forward, which is why we went from like the college algebra with a lab to college algebra with review, which is what we're working on for the fall. So our idea is to make it kind of a seamless course with it. I mean, our co-requisites already have all of the pieces, you know, we have the student success, you know, the learning skills, all of that prerequisite material, and the, you know, the problems that are working on the parent course. But, you know, it's well designed, just not well utilized. And that's, you know, it's an extra 2 hours, and convincing students it's a well spent 2 hours is a hard sell.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks so much, everyone. Due to time, we are going to move forward, but if you have any other questions, keep them coming in the chat, and I can always follow up with Stephanie afterwards and get some responses. And Stephanie, if you're okay with it, if you wouldn't mind dropping your email in the chat. Of course, she can't be available to assist everyone with every stage of your implementation, but I know she would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Kathy, are you ready for us to turn things over to you? We look forward to your presentation. Kathy is a former faculty member. She's worked with many institutions, not only across Kansas, but across the Midwest in implementing math pathways. And so we're really excited for her to share her expertise with you guys today. Kathy.
Hi, everyone. Okay, and some of you I may have spoken to a week ago today. I think I've seen some math faculty names where I did a workshop for the math faculty a week ago, all on different techniques. We got in the weeds with co-requisites. Okay, so let me, got this, let me do show. I promise this will not be very long, and I promise we will try to make sure it is useful to you. That's really important to me. So yes, I believe you guys can see. Jennifer, is that okay? Everyone can see the slides?
Yes, looks good.
Awesome. Okay. So let me because I like to see as many people as I can. So hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Almy. Some of you I know, I definitely know some names here. I've worked with 2 Kansas colleges, and I'm literally in the process of working on I have the email pulled up right now. I'm doing the contract with our 3rd Kansas college. We're finalizing that today. So if you're wondering who they are, Dodge City, as Stephanie talked about, Pratt. And we have Monette Depew is on here as a vice president at Pratt. I've worked with them, and then I'm getting ready to work with Coffeyville. But what I want to talk to you about is I want to give you something that you can take away and use at your college with this, because the idea of implementing changes with pathways and co-requisites, this is all I do and all my company does day in and day out. So we have lots of little good nuggets that you can take and use. Okay, so just a few things, a little bit. I'm going to keep this really short. My background was math faculty. I'm in Northern Illinois. I will keep it very brief, but my family is originally from Kansas. I always tell people that, and so I have a very strong affinity for Kansas, especially the Emporia area and the Chanute area, because that's where my family, each side, is from. I've done reform in tons in my college, my state, and nationally since 2007. So if you've heard of like the Carnegie Math Pathways, I worked with Dana Center. I worked with a lot of these big projects. If there's something nationally, I was probably involved with it. I was the developmental math chair for our national organization, AMATIC. I've been trying to improve math for students for a very long time. I wrote a developmental textbook. I don't advocate for it anymore, but I just want you to be aware of that the idea of like understanding curriculum, pedagogy, how do we get students to the point where they can learn? And it was not a traditional textbook. It was based on the pathways concept. But I don't advocate for it because we really found with the data, don't need standalone developmental math the way we once thought we did. And take that from someone who was a very big skeptic of co-requisites. I did not think that was true. I was like a lot of math faculty. I know the data said that for other places, but we were different. And I don't know if any of you has ever heard that. It's like, you don't know our school, you don't know our students, you don't know our high schools. We're different. And I found out actually that we weren't. So, but it took me a little bit to get on board with that. Now, I definitely think co-requisites can work. And because I work with co-requisites so much, and the biggest sticking point that I have with faculty is not the non-STEM courses like the modern college math and the statistics, but a lot of faculty, and myself included, we're very concerned of how do you do this with students on the STEM track that are going to have to go through college algebra. So that's what I did my dissertation on. I wanted to study it. I wanted to see what's possible. I already knew the literature, but I wanted to actually get in and study it formally and quantitatively. And that was fun, quote unquote, fun. Anyone who's done a dissertation, you know that it's interesting. I have led state level implementation in my state before. I work with a lot of states now, but the idea of working with many people across the state in many different levels, administrators, faculty, staff, is something I'm very familiar with. Also state boards, because I did that in Illinois related to a law that we had. And now I run my company. I've had this for 5.5 years. And we have branched out. We started basically as a company that was helping schools improve their math programs, whatever that looked like. And over the years, and it has just continued to grow, we're now up to around 60 colleges. We work with math, English, bio, and chem. And it's growing all the time. And so it's exciting. Basically, this is the idea of how to implement co-requisites and how to make math pathways works. This is what we do every day. And the people that I hire to do it all have a faculty background. And I think that has had a real reason of why we've had a lot of success. We absolutely always want to connect with administrators and staff. That matters. But as I think everybody knows this, faculty can be a hard sell. They have a lot of concerns. And so we feel like if we connect with faculty and we can build rapport with them, we can get a lot further with change and real change. So that's what we do. Okay, so this is what I want you to think about. Some of you you're all in different places. Some of you have already implemented. Some of you are waiting to see what's happening and getting ready to implement. And some of you are like kind of have your toe in the water, but are not fully there. I want you to think about a year from now and 2 years from now, that where do you want to be? So I would love if you could go to the chat. Tell me, where do you want to see your school a year or 2 years from now? Okay, and I'm starting to see full implementation. If anybody could share, like specifically, what does that mean? I guess I'm guessing you're saying you don't have the developmental courses, you have the placement, you have the co-requisites and the pathways. If I'm wrong on that, clarify it in the chat, but I'm guessing that's what we're trying to go for. Correct. Okay. Fully implementation, all of it. Anything else? I want to hear it. I want to be really respectful of your time. So I'm going to, I will talk quickly, but I do want to know, I'm curious where you want to go with it. English pathways too. Awesome. Yes. And here's what's really cool. When you start to get success in one discipline, other disciplines will be like, oh, we can do that. That's actually feasible. And you will see a ripple effect, which is nice. That's what we really want to see. You want to see pass rates. Yes, we want to see pass rates improve. Absolutely. All right. So this is what my goal is when I'm working with schools. We're going to focus on math today, but it doesn't matter what subject it is. Here's what I'm doing. And I'm not telling you this. I know this is going to sound like a pitch. I am going to offer you at the end of this, if you want, we're going to have some more information if you want specific help from my group. But if you don't, I still want you to leave with nuggets that you can use today. Okay. So the main thing is whenever we're doing this work with a school, the idea is we are not just trying to see student outcomes improve. Of course, that's the first priority. But reality is you're doing this with humans and they are going to be thinking about what is this going to mean for me? So if your registrar, your advisors, they're going to be like, I have no bandwidth. Are you going to be asking me to do more? Your faculty are going to be like, I've taught this course for 25 years. What do you mean we're changing it? So the reality is when I am working on a course, any kind of redesign, it's not just let's implement co-requisites or let's get math pathways. It's get them to scale, first off, meaning the vast majority of students are in them and benefiting from them. They're working, so we want success. And it has to work for everybody, start to finish. So whoever's in the staff, who's ever administration, who have students, all of it, the instructors that get the students after they take the course. We don't want to have inflated pass rates and it's like, yay, they all pass math. And then we get them in the next course and they don't know anything. Like that's not what we're trying to do. We want authentic success from start to finish. It's a high bar, but I want you to know you can move towards it. You absolutely can. So here's some lessons. This is from the literature. This is from all the work that we do and all the work that I read about, but also just a lot that we do day in and day out with schools. And some of this is directly from Kansas schools, that the schools that I've already worked with. Some tips for you. First off, if you get nothing out of today, if you're doing email, come back to me. Please build a cross-functional team to work on this on your campus. It is so essential that you do not only have math faculty at the table. This is not a math department initiative. It is institutional. When you start fiddling with any kind of gateway math or English course, you impact everybody, all programs, everyone. So you've got to have multiple voices at the table so you're making good decisions. Secondly, co-requisites aren't a magic bullet. You can move from prerequisites to co-requisites successfully, but it takes nuance. It is not just, well, we just put in 2 extra hours a week and the magic happens. I wish. It does not work that way. So number one, you've got to get math pathways. And most people that I talk to, they'll say, where are you doing that? You got to really look at your intake process. At what point does a student have to declare what they're going to do? And then when does that impact what math class they're going to take? Is that left to them? Do they have to talk to a human being? Because that was one of the things that we struggled with at Dodge City. We were really trying to get where students had to see like a math faculty member or an advisor, somebody, or we could have something in the computer system. And we just kept hitting roadblocks each place. With Pratt, they have a system where they're advising us set up. Every student that is incoming has to speak with an advisor, faculty or staff before they can do anything. So we had an easier time. Now, they didn't go with guided self-placement, but we still had students getting in the right course more easily because they had to talk to somebody. If you're a huge school, you have to figure out different ways how to make that work compared to if you're a small school. But pathways matter. And we don't want students like just picking a course. We want to let this is the course you're going to take, and this is what you need to get into. We don't use the same approaches for STEM versus non-STEM. How you do a co-requisite for modern college math or stats is very different than how you do a co-requisite for college algebra so that it is effective. Both can be effective, but they are not the same. Also, I love bridge programs. So that's why I'm going to work on one with Dodge City. It's very easy to implement a bridge program that can be very successful. It's also very easy to make it into this big bloated thing that does not work. So it's really important, like how you do that. So I'll just give you a tip. Shorter than you think. You can do a 1 or 2 week. 1 week is better. Bridge. You do not need a long experience. It's about connection, belonging, a little bit of math review, and helping students so that get their feet on the ground so that the co-requisite doesn't have to do all the heavy lifting. Okay, take that and run with that. Second, utilize what you have on your campus. You have amazing student supports. Every single college in this country has all kinds of supports, whether it's TRIO or tutors or adult basic ed or whatever. Utilize what you have and look at it and see what are you not using enough of. The key on a lot of this is what support needs to go to which students and when. That's the magic, is figuring out. I mean, and every college is different. Okay. This is a big one. I really talked about this with the faculty last week. You don't start building co-requisites until you have the gateway course doing what you want. You've got to look at it first and make sure we clean the closet, we get rid of, because sometimes courses get bulky and bloated over time. We've got to make sure we're meeting transfer agreements, but that we are doing it well. Clean up the course. Then we backwards design. We do not say, what are all the things that we used to do in beginning intermediate algebra, and let's smush them all together in 2 credits. No, you say, what do we need them to be able to do in college algebra? Then you work back and then you build a co-requisite so that it will support that success. It's an entirely different way of looking at things, and it works. I'm so big on this, and I've talked with KBOR about this, and I think they're on the same page. There's going to be nuance and differences in how the different Kansas colleges and universities implement this. Even though you have guidelines that you need to meet, there's variability in how you're going to do things. And that's good. And that's okay. And you will learn from each other. And that's an awesome thing. So that's always my favorite thing. Is like, what are our guidelines? Every state has different ones. Yours, in a lot of ways, remind me of I work with Michigan a lot. Theirs, in some ways, are very similar to it. It's like, these are the guidelines. Okay, how do we make that work for, Johnson County? How do we make that work for Pratt? That they're very, very different. How do we make that work for, Emporia State? So there are ways to do that. This is one thing. So please use this at will. This is one thing I'm really big on our framework. We always start with working on courses, placement, advising, registration. We start there and we do it in that order. Order matters. So any math people on here, these things do not commute. Order matters. Okay. Then we work on the classroom. But what we have to have the whole time is we have to have the cultural piece in place. You got to have a cross-campus team that meets regularly, and you've got to have basically like norms and like an agreement. Like, this is how we're going to work together. This is how we're going to make decisions. This is how we're going to evaluate things. And it takes a little bit to learn how to do that. It's harder on some campuses than others, but it's possible everywhere. And it may seem like, oh, that doesn't really matter. That is the key thing. If you don't address the culture, that is the thing that will take your redesign down without question. That's what keeps it going and making it successful. These are the 3 steps that we use. We start by figuring out, what are you doing that's working? What do you like? What don't you like? Don't just immediately be like, okay, we got to put a co-requisite on the schedule. That's strategy. You'll get there in a second. Figure out where you're at. Then we figure out, okay, what adjustments do we need to make in these different pieces? Courses, placement, advising, registration. How are we going to do that? What's it going to look like on our campus? How many credit hours? Is it the same instructor, different instructor? All those little things like that. You figure that out. Then you go to work, and notice it's not just like listed as a bullet list. It's in a circle. I always say you lather, rinse, repeat. You're going to do this over and over and over again. So that's why Dodge and Pratt are up in evaluate again. They've implemented, and now we're looking at what's working, what's not. What are we hearing from students? What are we hearing from staff? And then we're going to make adjustments. And I promise, Stephanie, I will finish this up very quickly. Excuse me, Jennifer, not Stephanie. I'm having a moment. Okay, so these are the different things that we do with colleges. The big thing I want to emphasize is, we're not here just to have like workshops and meetings and activities. Like, we do activities with colleges, but our goal is outcomes. My goal with every school that we work with is to get you to scale. Now, it depends on what you want to get to scale. We do this thing called a strategy for scale intensive. It's 3 to 4 months. I'm getting ready to start one with Coffeyville. We're going to have our kickoff meeting next month. And that's where we will do the evaluation and the strategize, and we'll figure out all the things. That's where we get everybody on board. Okay. So that's one of the big things is getting the buy-in, building the rapport, building the trust, all of that. Then we can actually really go to work. So we're going to have their plan by the end of that. Right now, I went and ran the data recently. We have 100% of our clients have extended with us to have us help with implementation. So if you want to implement, there's various levels, and it depends on how long you want to work on it. You want to have all of your co-recs pathways placement at scale. That takes total, not in addition to, total like 6 to 8 months. A year to 16 months from now, you can have everything, including the classroom, adjusted and at scale with changes that you need. You want it to work. That takes usually 1.5 to 2 years. That's what, because you have to wait for the data, then you have to iterate and you have to work forward. So we are going to, you're going to get information, and feel free to put it in the circular file if you're not interested, but I want to provide this so that you have an option. I have talked with KBOR about this, so it's not like they're necessarily endorsing anything. They're not, I don't have a contract with them or whatever, but they are open to the idea. If you want to be aware of some of the things that we can provide, you're going to get information next week about it. So if you want any of these high touch, they will be available for schools, and we'll have like the pricing and everything with it. If you're like, I can't afford that, I don't want to do that, not that we're crazy with prices, because we're not, but even if you're not and you're like, but I want some help, we are going to do a group option. I've done this in Michigan. I had 13 colleges that I worked with at once, and we did a cohort. Because you guys have such good guidelines, we already know what we can and can't do. We can get things accomplished in a group if you have a team that can monitor themselves and make decisions. That's the key thing. Can you get yourself to make decisions? If you're like, nope, we can't do that, then you probably want high touch support. Or if you want to go faster, high touch support will do that. So based on what we know from Kansas and what I've done with other states, we're going to do this as a group option. And then we're also going to do this as a group option. So we can have multiple Kansas colleges where we will help you do your systems in your classroom at scale. And you'll get a description of what that can look like next week. And this is based on cohorts that I've run in Illinois and Michigan, but also the work that we've done with individual colleges in Kansas. So that will be available. I'll put my email in the chat. You'll get that information. We probably don't have a ton of time for questions, but if we do, I'd be happy to answer them.
Absolutely. We probably have time for about 2 questions. So do you want to stop sharing your screen? I always like to be able to see one another when possible.
Yes.
Do we have any questions for Kathy?
Okay, so were you able to work with high schools to help prepare the students before they went to your college? If so, did this make the core requisites more successful? Funny you should mention that. So in my state, that was the thing I did at the at the state level. I ran what we call transitional math, which was our law that required these certain courses for high school seniors to get them college ready. And then colleges had to accept the students into college level courses, not for credit, but they were placed into it. So it wasn't dual credit. It was students who weren't in dual credit. It was the next level down. Absolutely, I've done a ton of work with that, and you can absolutely do it. But here's the coolest thing that I have found with co-requisites. They benefit everybody, even the students that are supposedly college ready. They're just that good. A good co-requisite can make a difference. And so it doesn't matter what they test. All students usually need more guidance on how to be an effective student. How do you market to students? So this is one of the big things, and I really emphasized this with the faculty last week. You have to sell, not monetarily, but like persuade students to not only sign up, unless you have mandatory where they have to take a co-requisite, you still have to persuade them to come to class. And that is one thing that can be really, really challenging to do. So the way that we do this is I'm a big on marketing to students that we've made a change, but also letting them hear from their peers. So that's one of the things that I really encourage schools to do is like have like a poster, have a picture of one of your students and a quote from one of your students about this class, why it was worth their time, why it made a difference in them passing. Students listen to their peers. We all listen to our peers. That's just the reality. Any other questions?
Just a reminder to everyone that you will have access to all the presentation slides today. These will be uploaded in our Google Drive under the EIT folder.
And I put my email in the chat. You can email if you have questions on something or if you want to inquire, but more information will also be coming.
Great.
I'll turn
Well,
it
I
back to
think given what that last question was related to marketing, maybe now's a great time to go ahead and transition to our next presentation, which is all about communication plans. Thank you so much, Kathy. We really appreciate your time today and sharing the work that you've done with us so that can inform the things that we'll be doing on our campuses across the state. So now it's my pleasure to introduce my KBOR colleague, Matt Keith. As some of you on the call will remember, when reverse transfer was entering this stage of the process, KBOR did a communications plan that just helped make sure there was common language across the state around the reverse transfer work. And so now we're going to do something similar with Math Pathways. And so Matt is going to share some information with you today on what that common language as a starting point can look like as you build out your own communication strategy. So Matt, thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Thanks everybody for the opportunity to join you and speak a little bit about communication for math pathways. So as all of this great work is being done to create these math pathways for students, we're starting to think about a strategy for sharing the important information with all audiences in a way that's going to connect it across the system. And in doing this, as Jennifer mentioned, we were really able to look at the work that had been done with reverse transfer or system-wide transfer, look at the plans in place for that to communicate with the common language so that students and other interested audiences would really understand the impact across the system, and that this was a system-wide effort that was going to impact them no matter where their educational journey takes them. So start off by looking at what are the key communications objectives as we're starting to put together this strategy. So first is just helping the audiences understand what are math pathways and what's the value that it creates for the students, what's the value that it creates for the state. And then helping individual students understand how math pathways are going to help them reach their goals, as well as how they can navigate through those pathways within the system, making sure that wherever they are, they've kind of got a sort of a common understanding of, yep, this is how this is working and how this is going to help me get here. Again, wherever I start and wherever I end. And then a big part of how we do that is utilizing common branding, utilizing common language that is easily identifiable to all those audiences across the system, and recognizing that there's going to be flexibility within that. Everybody's going to have slightly different communications needs, slightly different audiences, and slightly different delivery methods for getting the information out. So what we're really trying to do is sort of provide some suggested language as well as provide common branding from a visual aspect. But again, understanding that you all might have unique needs in terms of how you're going to reach a particular audience, and that how you frame it, it might even differ across audiences. So speaking of which, when we think about audiences, there are the three big ones that we were thinking about. Obviously, first and foremost is the students. They're the ones who are going to be navigating this. It's going to have a direct impact on them, depending on which pathway they're going through. Then we also think about making sure that parents, families, guardians, those who are closest to students, who are helping them, talking through decisions with them and helping them understand and plan for their future, that they have an understanding of what math pathways are as well, and how that is going to impact the student in their life, so that they can help have an informed conversation with them. And then the last group, stakeholders who might not necessarily be students themselves and might not be progressing through the system, but they have a stake in the success of this. So whether we think about policymakers, or we think about employers who are going to be hiring students, that they understand what math pathways are and the value that creates for the students. And then as the students transition out after earning a credential, what that broader impact is going to be on the state. So core messages for all audiences that are going to be in this strategy that we share out. And again, these are suggested messages that you can certainly adapt as needed. and all audiences, we're thinking, again, broadly speaking, yes, students, but maybe not necessarily getting into the details as much for this broader audience, but making sure that their families and that those other stakeholders understand what is the Math Pathways Initiative, and then why should we have it in Kansas? Making sure that they understand what it's doing, what the value add is for students and for the state. So those are going to be really high level messages that just kind of give them a quick synopsis. It's the elevator pitch. We'll have a little bit more detail in there as well. And kudos to Jennifer for doing a great job of helping put the language together on these core messages, as well as the messages for the student audience, which are, again, going to be a little bit more directed, because we're going to want to make sure that they understand a little bit more detail, again, in these high level messages that we're thinking about putting out on website, on any sort of printed materials that are going out, social media posts, things like that are being used to communicate this to students. So again, the student audience is going to need, we're going to want to direct them ultimately at the end of the day to admissions team or to an advisor if they've already been admitted, to help understand what math pathways are and how that's going to impact them, and how their math pathway might change depending on the major that they've selected. So again, these are all going to be suggested messages. Feel free to adapt them as needed. These will all be in the written document. And then when we talk about common branding, that's that shared visual identity. This is something that transfer and reverse transfer have used successfully to help identify courses that are part of that initiative. And it really creates a sort of quick way for a student to be able to tell, yep, this is whatever institution I'm at. Yep, this is part of this initiative. We'll make sure that the logos are available in institutional color schemes, which is, again, sort of falling back on what's been done with the reverse transfer plan, so that all of you can have access this logo it's the same logo, but using your brand colors, and not just the sort of standard blue there. That's a very quick overview. If we have time, I certainly would be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt. So if anyone has any questions, please drop them in the chat. While we're waiting a minute, I will share that Sam and I had an opportunity to chat with admission teams back a couple months ago. And I just want to really emphasize that I think in terms of communication and branding, this is a really great opportunity to recruit Kansas students to remain in Kansas to get to obtain a contemporary math education, right? You don't have to go to another state. And so I think there is like a way to really build hype and excitement around the opportunities and flexibility that we're providing students, so that the math course that they take is really meaningful and contributes to their major. So if anyone wants us to speak with admissions teams about how they might do that, or some language that they might have on hand around getting students excited, let us know. Happy to work with Matt on something related to your admissions teams. Okay, so we have one question in the chat. So the common KBOR Math Pathways branding to replace institution-specific branding.
So I would think that they could coexist, so that there's an opportunity for you to use your institutional specific branding, and then also use a logo or a micro logo to also identify this as a math pathways course, so that students understand that there's system-wide, but not replace what you're doing at an institutional level, but just to sort of supplement it and live alongside it. And I think one thing that we haven't included in our plan is sort of what materials, because all of you are going to have different ones. I think from a KBOR perspective, we're certainly going to be putting it online, on our website. We'll probably have some social media at some point as well, but you all will have your own channels. So we haven't really included anything about communications channels for where to put any of these any of the language that you choose to use or to adapt for your own purposes, whether you'd want to put that on a website, whether you want to put that on materials that you are developing as sort of physical collateral materials that you're handing out, presentation, social media, your teams are going to have their, you're going to know best ways to push that out to your audiences.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt. We also received a question about what materials we are putting out for high school counselors. I can address that. We have 2 KSDE team members as part of our Math Pathways Task Force, and they are making presentations across the state on this topic. And I've put together PowerPoints for them. They're using that information to customize the materials that they deliver to specific high schools. So the partnership with KSDE is helping us deliver that content in a way that's using consistent language that KBOR is using to talk about the project as well. Okay, thanks, Matt. I just have a few updates for you guys since this is our last EIT meeting of the semester. Thank you so much for putting up with me for the entire semester. We are going to have one optional EIT meeting in the spring. There was a survey that many of you filled out, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks ago, and there was interest in a spring EIT meeting, so we will do that. So please watch your emails for that calendar invite. I'm thinking shortly after spring break, it'll be about the time that you begin to think about completing your performance agreement, and so that might be a good time for us to gather and talk about how things are going. In terms of math faculty professional development, just 2 reminders. The first one is that we have the final session of the semester coming up on December 6th, and that registration link is open and available on the website. We will have one more presentation on January 24th, and so we'll open up registration for that right after the December 6th one ends. And so after the January 24th one, our sessions for the math faculty will be complete. The topics for the last 2 sessions will be coming out soon, and thank you so much to I think we had 23 institutions who completed the survey to help us shape the content and the topics that we're going to use for the last 2 math faculty PD sessions. Next, just a friendly reminder that the Google Drive will go away on December 13th. So please be sure to go in, download any of the materials from the EIT folder that you would like to save and use for future reference. And then lastly, it's my understanding that VP Munholland mentioned to the SoCo COCO groups just Wednesday that we are excited to join the Complete College America Alliance, and we will have a CCA KBOR launch event coming up in the spring. And so I want to drop right now into chat, if I can do both, a save the date memo that you can use so that you could go ahead and get this event on your calendar. More details to follow, but wanted to go ahead and share that save the date with everyone. This is really relevant to Math Pathways, Complete College America. If you do a quick Google search, if you're not familiar with them, they are really focused on all things student success oriented. And so Math Pathways being a particular project that Complete College America has worked with over the years. So I'll share that save the date memo as well in the email that I send out either later today or early next week, summarizing today's meeting as well as providing that Google Drive link one more time. Okay, guys, with the holidays approaching, I'm going to give you the gift of time and give you 5 minutes back to your day. Thanks so much for being with us. We look forward to seeing everyone in the spring for our meeting. And between now and then, don't forget to reach out to me directly if you have any questions. Thanks, colleagues.